Special Master Raymond Dearie made a new order in the Donald Trump case. Not too substantive, but pretty important because we are now rummaging through all of the documents that were seized out of his residence. Recall that the FBI came out with about 15 plus boxes. They said it was about 200,000 pages of documents in total, or 200,000 pages of actual pages that make up a different amount of documents. So there's a whole bunch of materials they're rummaging through. And we have previously talked about the two different main categories that they're fighting about. One are the classified documents, the other are the non-classified documents. At this point, we have some serious debate about the 100 classified documents, because that is really a portion of that is what is being discussed in the Court of Appeals at the 11th Circuit and also in the U.S. Supreme Court. You can see this is the docket from the United States Supreme Court back on October 4th. That's when Donald Trump submitted his appeal to the United States Supreme Court. And then next week on Tuesday, October 11th, Judge Clarence Thomas said that by 5 p.m., the government has to file their response. So there's an application to the Supreme Court, and depending on how this goes, right, they may send this back down in order of the 11th Circuit to do something differently, which then may go back to the district court where Judge Eileen Cannon presides, and it may come back down and implicate Raymond Dearie right here. And so there's a lot of layers to this thing, but while all of that is happening, Raymond Dearie is just going about business as usual. He's saying, all right, well, here's what I have to be doing while everything's being appealed. I got a bunch of stuff I got to rummage through. And if you remember, he has an obligation to update the court. Raymond Dearie is doing that. In a 3-page filing, we have a new special master order coming out of the West Palm Beach Division in Donald Trump versus United States of America. The special master, Raymond J. Dearie, he is the judge from the Eastern District of New York, very experienced, sat on FISA courts and done all sorts of different types of cases like this. And previously talking about this case, you may remember that the government said that they were done filtering through the documents. So it's literally like a filter. You've sort of got, a big bunch of stuff coming in at the top, a filter, and then anything that shouldn't go through gets separated out. The stuff that shouldn't go through in this case are attorney-client privileged materials, attorney work product doctrine, things that might be executively privileged and so on. Those all have to be filtered out. And now that that has been done, the special master is giving an update back to Judge Eileen Cannon. A lot of moving parts here, but hopefully I'm somewhat cohesive. The special master, writes Judge Dearie, is in receipt of the parties' joint log of disputes for the filter materials. Remember the spreadsheets that we were talking about? They finally completed them and they sent them back over to the special master. And boy, oh boy, we talked a lot about these spreadsheets, if you recall. They have to fill them out, put different categories on them, and the government has to fill them out, send them over to Trump, and he gets to dispute them. If he says row 31 is not what I think you say it is, then he's got to make that known. And once both sides take a look at the documents, then it goes back over to the special master. But in this case, we are only talking about the non-classified materials. It goes on. He says, both of these logs of the disputes for the filter materials have been filed under seal. In light of the information included in the filter log and the cover letter, the undersigned, meaning me, the judge, I am respectfully directing the parties as follows. So the judge says, okay, you got your spreadsheet back to me. I've looked through it. Here's what I've got for you. Section 1. We have two different types of materials, filter A and filter C. They say, Trump is not raising an assertion of attorney-client privilege or attorney work product for any of the following documents. And this is quite a lot of them, right? So this is the moment if Trump wants to raise these privileges and to sort of use the filter to take these documents out, to go through the spreadsheet going, okay, row 37, row 41. How many rows are there? How many? 200,000. Okay, goes on and on and on. And he says, okay, these are not your business. You shouldn't look at these documents because they're privileged. But the judge said, oh, well, here's what we've got. Trump is not raising an assertion of privilege on any of this stuff. And there's sort of a lot of it. Filter A01 through A05, A017, 22, A25, 26, okay, so on and so forth. There's about 7, 8, 9, 10 bullet points here, going all the way through A058. Now, We don't know what a lot of these numbers mean and what this stuff really entails, but on some of the prior property inventories that we've looked at, there were a lot of Time magazine covers. There was sort of gift memorabilia and stuff like that. It wasn't all that consequential to national security, but it was all rummaged up, gathered up, because the warrant was so overbroad and not particular that they could basically take whatever Judge Reinhardt said they wanted to. Raymond Dearie continues. He says, "Me, the special master, I've reviewed the filter log, everything that you've sent over, and I've confirmed that Trump is not asserting attorney-client privilege or attorney work product doctrine for the above listed documents, basically settling those documents. And pursuant to the parties' agreement, the privilege review team is now directed to furnish the above listed documents to the case team on or before the 10th. Okay, so all of those documents that were with the filter team, they go back over to the case team. And like, we have been talking about all these different teams, and this is the final disposition of the documents. They say, we think these were problematic. Turns out we showed them to Trump. Trump says they're not problematic. They go back towards the investigation. And the judge said that has to happen pretty soon, before October 10th. After the case team gets the documents, the case team and Trump now are to confer and to attempt to resolve or narrow the disputes about executive privilege. All right. Now, we've got a whole nother layer here, right? This is how this stuff gets complicated. And on previous shows here, we've talked about all the different layers: executive privilege, attorney privilege, work product doctrine, presidential records, documents that may have been declassified. There's a whole list of things that may implicate the documents. You can have one document that is classified, and that same document is also executively privileged, and that same document is also attorney-client privileged, right? So in order for the government to get those documents, they've got to beat all of the different levels. Not only does it have to be not attorney-client work product, but now after it goes back over to the case team, then they have to talk about executive privilege, and then they have to talk about the Presidential Records Act. It's all there. So you have to sort of beat every layer. Case team is going to get to those documents. They're going to send those back over to Trump, and they're going to try to resolve those disputes. So taking that same spreadsheet and then saying, this is why you can't have those documents now. No, it's not attorney-client privilege. It's now executive privilege. Or it's now a personal record that is outside the scope of the Presidential Records Act. On or before October 20th, 2022, so just about 13 days from now, the parties, Trump and the government, shall submit to the Special Master, Raymond Dearie, an updated log containing any disputes about the remaining documents. So now that we know that they're not attorney-client work product, they're going to do a second filter to see if there's anything else that might kick these documents out of the government's hands. Dearie says, as to the remaining filter A and C materials, the undersigned, meaning me, the stuff that may be challenged, they say, the undersigned here, Special Master, will endeavor to promptly issue a report making recommendations regarding Trump's assertions of attorney-client privilege or work product doctrine, which I will then submit to the court for review in accordance with the original order. So they've identified a whole bucket of stuff. They're saying here that there's a big portion of this that's not being challenged by Donald Trump's team. But the rest of it, the remainder, it's all being challenged. And so Special Master Dearie is now saying, I'm going to look through the objections and I'm going to make a final decision. Once I make that final decision, I will then send that over to Judge Eileen Cannon, who is the presiding judge over the district court case. All in one section. Now, not a lot of actual language there, but there's a lot of mechanics happening in that paragraph. As to filter B, they say that the parties jointly recommend that the Special Master not resolve disputes concerning the filter B materials, with one exception below. They say the parties also agree that the original filter B materials should be returned to plaintiff. And this is the stuff that's sort of not relevant, that's a little overbroad, that may be privileged. and they're just saying, we're not going to really contest it. It's going back. Accordingly, the court directs the privilege review team to release the original Filter B materials to the plaintiff, Trump, by October 10th. So there's two big buckets, bucket A, bucket B. We're fighting over bucket A, sort of. It's getting split into smaller buckets. Bucket B, all that stuff's going back over to Trump. Now, Raymond Dearie, the special master, he says, the parties disagree, quote, whether the special master should make a privilege determination with respect to the documents marked B in a letter in the privilege B materials. And he's referencing the cover letter. Now, this is an interesting thing because he continues. He says, both parties are asking me to consider the privilege about this one document. But then he says, but Trump has made no assertion of privilege as to that document, and the parties agree the document is not privileged. This is a weird paragraph, because as you can see, it says the parties disagree about whether the special master should make a privilege determination. So it sounds like Trump's team wants the special master to look at B76 and make a determination about that. But they also agree that it's not privileged. Plaintiff has made no assertion of privilege, and they agree it's not privileged. And so he says, you're kind of asking me to do something that I can't do. He says, in the absence of any disagreement here, there is no designation dispute for me to adjudicate. If you want me to settle this, there has to be a legitimate dispute, but we don't see one here. He says, the privilege review team, give that copy back to the plaintiff along with the other Filter B materials. Promptly return the original copy back over to Trump. So Raymond Dearie finishes. He says, finally, seeing no reason to insert the special master or the court into the chain of custody, the privilege review team is directed to maintain a control copy of Filter B materials as it has throughout this litigation. So court doesn't want possession of it, and saying the government can maintain that Filter B copy while the originals go back to Trump. The next status conference for all parties scheduled October 18th, 12 a.m. by phone, signed by Raymond Dearie out of Brooklyn, New York. And so the takeaway here is there's not much being contested. It sounds like there's a big bucket of these materials that Trump is really not fighting at all. Says, no attorney-client, no work product doctrine, no materials that would kick this bucket of documents out of the government's possession. There are obviously the things that are sort of filling in the gaps there. Those are the documents that they are claiming privilege over. But even if the government is looking through these for attorney-client work product filters, right, they have to do several additional layers. One is going to be executive privilege, and then we may very well see the presidential records privileges also being applied as well. So we're going to continue to see additional updates, a very kind of limited order, but important mechanics on how these documents are being shared back and forth. In order to facilitate the processing of all the Trump Mar-a-Lago documents, the government has decided to enlist the help of third-party vendors, third-party contractors. And if you recall, Judge Eileen Cannon demanded the government provide them with an update. This is that update. Two-page document filed by the U.S. Department of Justice, submitted October 5th, 2020. And this is going over to Raymond Dearie. It says, hey, dear judge, this is being written by the prosecutors who are investigating Trump. They say, hey, dear Judge Dearie, special master, consistent with Judge Cannon's order, the parties entered contracts with third-party vendors now to scan, process, host, and provide a review platform of the seized materials. Now, I don't know if this is going to encompass some of those 100 documents that were the ultra-national classified materials, because they don't tell us here. But presumably, there is some interface between all of those different documents. And so now you have, right, rather than having these materials just sitting in a storage room down at Trump's office, you now have the entire FBI rummaging through them, all the DOJ. They're also going out and getting third-party vendors to scan, process, host, provide a review platform for all the seized materials as they rummage through these overdue library books, which is what the government is making all this ado about, humbly speaking here. So that is the final order now. Remember, Judge Cannon said, you guys better get this stuff processed pretty quickly. And the government was having issues. Actually, Trump and his defense team were having issues because they couldn't find anybody who was going to be willing to facilitate this role for his defense. So the government came out and they said, well, that's okay. We'll find somebody who can handle all this stuff for you. So those are the two big filings that hit on the Trump docket. We also have the Supreme Court docket, which we had already talked about. Out of the Supreme Court next week, we'll get an application response submitted by the government prosecutors. And so once that hits, we'll take a look at that. But we've been wanting to hear from Trump's defense attorneys about the status of the case. Let's see here. Alina Abba, Trump defense lawyer, is now giving an update on Trump's case as it lands at the Supreme Court docket.
$75 million for Mar-a-Lago. Show me any property that's comparable for $20.
If that's worth $75 million, we should pool our finances.
You want to split it? We'll split it.
We could probably get a favorable loan and go down there. I mean, I'd love to have that. It'd be tough to air condition that place in the summer. Okay, so the former president said just this week that he would like the Supreme Court to take a look at this. How does that work?
So you file an application with the Supreme Court. They take a look at it. They've already said that they do want a DOJ response. So that's good. And what they'll do is they'll take a look at what the 11th Circuit did, which we believe was flawed, saying that the special master can't look at classified documents. Well, then why do you have a special master?
Right.
The 100 classified documents were the key point of this entire case. They were fighting about the special master so that they could appoint a special master to take control of those 100 documents. And if you recall, the appeal to the 11th Circuit was a jurisdictional issue, and they were saying that the appeal of the special master to the 11th Circuit by the government was not within the 11th Circuit's jurisdiction. That's what the appeal to the Supreme Court is all about, saying that the appeal to the 11th Circuit was invalid. They're asking the Supreme Court to essentially reverse all of that. And there is good argument to this. Alina Abba saying that if there were no 100 confidential documents, you wouldn't really need a referee to come in and help manage a situation, a debate over inconsequential documents is the point I'm trying to make. Here's Alina.
DOJ, again, dual justice system, trying to slow things down and try and get, what I'm sure they hope is some charge before midterms. It's all a political ploy, and it's nothingness. This is a library book situation.
A library book situation, indeed, Alina. You're exactly right about that. The head librarian, Deborah Steidel-Wall, is very unhappy that she didn't get those books returned to her on time. Trump made a little joke about her National Archives. She didn't like that. Now she's the most powerful person in the world. You don't return those library books, she just picks up the phone. Oh, hey, Merrick Garland, can you get Christopher Wray with the FBI on the phone? We need to go raid a former president. They say, no problem. When would you like to do it? How's Tuesday? Alina Abba, Trump's defense lawyer, explaining how SCOTUS is going to proceed once the government responds with their application response. Alina Abba also saying Trump doing quite well out there. Every time that there is a big issue with Trump, it seems like his poll numbers go up. Every time he gets attacked, Trump seems to weather the storm, almost like he thrives from it, almost like he's anti-fragile in a sense.
Why is Donald Trump any different, and why is he being treated so differently?
Because he still has a very large political career ahead of him if he so chooses. My client is ahead in the polls, and every time they try and knock him down, his poll numbers go up. So you know what? We welcome it because he's going to fight back, and he continues to do so. But you're right. Look at Obama. He's got a warehouse of documents next to a freaking McDonald's.
McDonald's?
A McDonald's. Donald Trump's is at Mar-a-Lago, secure, gated, double locked, cooperating with the DOJ, with Secret Service around it, and he gets raided. It's a very frightening time for our country.
Donald Trump protected very well at Mar-a-Lago. He was there for many years, 4 years, in fact, regularly attending that location. And it was highly secure at that time, good enough to have documents while he was the president. He still has Secret Service protection. He still has many privileges associated with the presidency. And is a raid something that is necessary when you have other presidents who apparently, according to Trump's defense team, they're hanging out outside McDonald's with chicken McNuggets and Happy Meals with their national security secrets? Why can't Trump have his down at a beach in Mar-a-Lago? That's Trump's defense lawyer, Alina Abba, who is explaining how the case and cases against Donald Trump are proceeding. And so we will, of course, have updates as they continue to come on all of the Donald Trump cases. And we appreciate you following and subscribing and joining us as we continue to cover it all.